Alright, so the thing about this movie is that it was doomed from the start. It takes a franchise that's already stretched thin and turns it into something even more grim. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Not So Super Movie Reviews. Today we're going to be talking about the Fantastic Four 2015. It had a critic review score of 9% and a user review score of 18%, which might sound familiar as that's the exact score Catwoman got. Now, I don't know if it deserves to be on the same level as Catwoman, but it certainly tries to get there. Alright, so let's say something nice about the movie first. So, the first thing that I thought worked about this movie was that they did attempt to focus on the relationship between Doctor Doom and the Fantastic Four and their relationship with each other, which is definitely a staple of a Fantastic Four comic book / movie, is their relationships with each other. Because from the beginning, the Fantastic Four is not your typical comic superheroes. They're not superhumans, they're humans that have superpowers, in that it was always about their relationships. That's what made them so revolutionary when these comics released, was that it was a comic about realistic people. And so this movie does make an attempt, and so I do have to give them a B for effort. Not even an A, but they did attempt to make it about that. We'll get into maybe why they didn't land on it so much, but I gotta at least recognize that. Second thing that I thought worked about this movie was the casting / chemistry of these characters. On a surface level, I really didn't have a problem with the casting for any of these characters. I did kind of have a problem with them sort of aging them down to like a teenager levels, or college age kids levels, but that aside, I didn't hate any of the characters, and I thought their interactions with each other had promise. I don't think the writing got them to where they could have been, but I think these particular actors could have delivered on a good script if it was there. And now for everybody's favorite, what didn't work? And oh boy, let's get into that. So the first thing I want to talk about, and it's a little bit of a nitpicky thing, but it's the effects. And I'm talking about the CGI and the practical effects. A lot of the set design and graphics are very cookie-cutter superhero movie. The transportation machine and those effects are very typical. I guess just from a style standpoint, it's very safe. In the beginning where Ben Grimm meets Reed Richards as little kids and they go to see his machine. First of all, he builds an interdimensional portal as a 5-year-old, or I don't know how old kids are, but that was already unbelievable. But the set design there is such a it reminds me of Blank Man a little bit. You just have random one you see a server stack with an N64 controller glued to it. The Thing, they did okay. I liked the design of the character. Was a little bit more rugged and realistic as opposed to the old Fantastic Four movies where it was a little more cartoony but practical. But it still didn't look that great at times. And look, they just can't get Reed Richards stretching right. They just can't do it. Not even in 2015. It's so bad. Alright, the second thing I have wrong with this movie is poor character design / development. When you're talking about, you've got 5 different origin stories to tell in one movie, which of course is a daunting task. Okay, you've got to tell the origin story that you would normally do for 2 characters, the hero and the villain, the hero being the main focus. Now you've got 4 heroes and 1 villain who is very much a part of the group to begin with. That's a hard story to tell. But I think the comics manage that by telling one origin story that includes this diverse family. And that's kind of how you get around it. And they didn't do a very good job of that. The idea of making Sue Storm and Johnny Storm, like brother and sister that were adopted, I have no problem with that at all. But you don't believe it. They don't feel like brother and sister. They're only brother and sister because you tell us that they're brother and sister. And that's such an important relationship that they didn't get right. Sue Storm, apparently every actress just has to play her as straightforward and boring as possible. Because this is no different. This performance is no different. The writing, again, I think is mostly the culprit here, but it's definitely a problem. Reed Richards, he's got no, flavor to him, no life to him. He's just, this guy's a nerd, and we know he's smart because he built this machine. And they're just kind of giving you surface level reasons for why these characters are the way they are. The worst treatment is Ben Grimm. Well, maybe Dr. Doom. But, Ben Grimm is supposed to be Reed Richards' lifetime friend. He's so shoehorned in. They do touch on the growing up together, but the reason that he's even with them when they get their powers is so just crammed in. They're like, literally Reed Richards just calls him up and is like, hey, you want to come with us? Even though you haven't been in this whole science montage. So that was kind of disappointing. I think the older movies actually did a better job of the family dynamic relationship, even though it was so over the top and campy. They definitely did a better job of that. The character that they just did completely dirty was Dr. Doom. I mean, in the comics, he's one of the most badass characters. He's the Darth Vader of Marvel Comics. I am fully, okay to say that. I feel like if you're a big comic book lover and you feel that was out of line, you let me know. But he's the big bad. If you think about any of the other big bads in the Marvel Comics, Thanos, the Beyonder, Dr. Doom has kicked them in the face. And that's kind of his whole deal. Is he wants more and more power to have more and more control, but he wants that control so that he can protect the ones he loves. Which he just takes that to another extreme. Dr. Doom has no problem killing someone, but he's not a mass murderer. Okay? And the character in this movie is just a douchebag, tech-savvy kid who spends a year in this crazy interdimensional world that turns him into an all-powerful murder machine. That is such a worse story at the end of the day. What do you want? You want a bratty douchebag kid, jealous kid, who becomes a mass murderer demigod just suddenly? Or do you want someone who's proven their adeptitude at science and magic and become so powerful that they enact their will on the world around them? That's so much better. And nobody can give us that Doom. Okay, and so I hope that the MCU, and I have a lot of faith that the MCU will do that better. Lastly, on what didn't work, when the movie gets to the point where they get their Fantastic Four powers, which takes way too long, by the way, when it finally gets there, the movie just goes off the rails. Until you get to that point in the movie, you're thinking to yourself, okay, this isn't really a good movie, but it's not like Catwoman level bad. And then they get their powers, and it's like, every single thing that happens after that is like, what? And you're just like, you're watching and you're like, okay, wait a minute, what? We're 1 year in the future now for no reason? Reed Richards abandoned his friends and family? And Ben Grimm? Reed Richards never do that. Ben Grimm becomes a super soldier? Ben Grimm could be whatever he wants. He's the Thing. They can't hold him, and he just does it, and he acts like, oh, I'm being held against my will. But you don't hold the Thing against his will. And, Sue and Johnny just hang out in this government base for a year. And Johnny's like, I'm actually okay with being like a government shill. It just is so stupid. And it skips over just the most important part of the Fantastic Four story is them learning about how to come to terms with their powers together. Which, again, thematically, I think the original movie did actually get that. Or not the original, but the more recent but not modern 2005, I don't know. Either way, they did get that right, out of all the other things they got wrong. The Dr. Doom reveal, he looks terrible. His head is gigantic. He's just crazy. He's just like, I want to murder everyone. just because. His reasoning is totally stupid. And the final fight scene is just... Okay, so they get portaled into this other dimension where Doctor Doom has been for a year, just gaining godlike powers, just by being there. Kind of like a Superman with our sun kind of situation, it seems like. And Doctor Doom can, for some reason, create a black hole using his powers and rocks. No one ever explains that. And then they each, it's so formulaic, they each try to take him on by themselves, they fail. As soon as they actually work together, they beat him, and then the government, because they were able to kick Doctor Doom's ass, is just kind of like, we're not going to keep using you anymore. You can have this huge facility with all this technology. We're totally sorry. Our bad. So, yeah, it's just that, if you're watching this movie, buckle up, because when they get those powers, everything's going batshit insane. Alright, now for my vote for hardest moment to watch. And this one was easy for me, as it often is, unless there's just so many bad scenes. But there's one that stands out to me, and it is the Doctor Doom murder spree. So Doctor Doom, after a year of being stuck in this other dimension, gets released back into our Earth dimension before immediately returning back. He literally just comes out, murders everyone in this science facility, and then goes back to the other dimension. And that scene thematically is so out of place with the rest of the movie. I felt like for a second I was watching Brightburn. He's literally just straight up murdering people in these horror scenes in these dark faded hallways, and all the lights go out and suddenly just blood splattering everywhere. And it just doesn't make sense. I thought I was watching a superhero movie. Now I'm watching a slasher film. Except for the Freddy Krueger or the Jason is Doctor Doom, who is not this mindless killing machine. He's not supposed to be. And it's just, it's hard to watch because it just reminds you of everything that the movie does wrong. And it's so out of place. Like I said, thematically, it's jarring. So yeah, that's definitely my hardest moment to watch. Alright, so let's talk about who was right by my standards. The critics or the users. And on this one, I gotta say, this isn't Catwoman level bad, alright? This is definitely, I'm gonna have to go with the users, because it is very bad, okay? It's definitely bad. But it wasn't that bad. It wasn't Catwoman bad. There's some parts of the movie that have redeeming qualities. And again, when you finish watching the movie, you're so perplexed by that last 20 minutes that you kind of have this PTSD of wait a minute, or shell shock. You're just okay, hold on. But when you sit down to think about it, there's some things that if they had gone in a better direction in the end, they could have been forgiven from the beginning. So it started to be an almost good movie that went completely off the rails. This movie was not so super and not so fantastic, but I'll give it an 18% for sure. And now for a new segment called the Bad Line Sning Round. Bad Line Sning Round. Anyway, I'm going to take a few of the bad lines from the movie and I'm going to just say them real quick. So, you like music? Is that kind of your thing? Dr. Doom over here. The energy. It's alive. There is no victor. There is only doom. What can I say? It's fantastic. Alright everybody, thank you once again for watching another one of my videos. If you have any suggestions for a movie you'd like me to review, it can be as old or as new as you want. It just has to be a superhero movie or comic book movie that is 65% or less on Rotten Tomatoes. That includes user or critic review. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the notification button if you want to get notifications. And I'll see you all next week.